for doing this. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
This means a lot. Yeah, I'm fascinated by attorneys because personally, I think you know a little bit about my story. I was so adverse to them, especially with the kind of family life I had and what I was told about attorneys, right? So now that I have all these attorneys in my sphere, I'm kind of disarmed.
Yeah. And we're disarming people usually.
Yeah. And I do want to talk about that too, but there's a bunch of different stuff I want to talk about. The last thing I want to do is make this kind of biographical, because that's just not how we don't have standard interviews here. But let me make sure I have this correct. You were born and raised in Atlanta, right? So you are not a native Pittsburghian? Yinzer 412?
Yinzer, yeah. No, I am not. I'm a Georgian. I'm a Georgia peach.
Georgia peach.
That's me.
You came to Pittsburgh for schooling, right?
Yes. Yep, for law school.
And that's University of Pittsburgh.
Yep, University of Pittsburgh.
Right on.
Yeah.
And she stayed.
I did.
What the hell's wrong with her? She stayed.
I know. Trust me, it wasn't the gray skies that really drew me in. Yeah,
the lack of sunshine.
Exactly. My mom will be FaceTiming me from the porch in Atlanta. I'm like,
beer. What else was it?
Yeah, exactly. It definitely wasn't the weather.
3 days a year we see sun. 3-4 days a year. That's it.
And that's about it.
So why did you stay?
Because of the job, honestly. I grew to really like Pittsburgh during law school. COVID kind of, hindered that because I didn't get to...
What year did you graduate?
I graduated in 2022, so last year.
Right on.
Yep. So actually, it was the halfway through my first year is when COVID hit. So it was the second semester. We went on spring break and then just never returned. And they were like, okay. And so I went back to Atlanta for a little bit and then came back to Pittsburgh. We were fully remote my second year, but I was still living in Pittsburgh. I was like, so I could go to the library and stuff like that. And then third year, we finally got to be back in person and it was insane. So I didn't get to see as much of the city as I wanted to, like the first year being here, but I've tried to make up for it.
So you stayed in Pittsburgh. I'm just shocked because... I'm always interested when people do go to school and then they stay. My daughter's at Athens University for Ohio U, which is a very small town. And they love it there. Yeah. And they rave about it. And I always say, are you going to come home? And she goes, well, Dad, there's nothing here. Of course I want to come home.
Yeah, exactly.
Pittsburgh's a little different story.
Yeah.
So you finished law school during the pandemic.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah. I want you to talk a little bit about the pandemic and going to law school.
Yeah, it was, law school's not something that you can fully mentally prepare yourself for.
Like what?
On normal circumstances.
Why is that?
It's unlike anything else. You go to college, you kind of understand what you're getting into. You're like, okay, I'm going to be studying and then I'm going to be, having a good time and like that. You kind of mentally prepare yourself for that. But law school, it's so intensive because you have, maybe 4 or 5 classes and they're just so, you're doing so much work. It's basically a full-time job. You wake up and you start working. You start doing homework, you start reviewing, and then you go to class and then you keep doing work and then you go to another class and you come back and you're working from, probably 8 until 6, like nonstop pretty much. So it's a different dynamic than undergrad or like any kind of other schooling, I think. So that was weird. And then like your first year there, I'm finally starting to get the groove of it.
It's 2020.
It's 2020. First year there, finally starting to get in the groove. I finished my first semester. Second semester's going along, and then boom, fully remote. I was like, okay.
You started in 19.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yep, started in 19, and then 2020.
So second semester.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, so unwind that. What do you remember? When did you realize something was askew, and when did you know that you were your schooling was going to be interrupted officially?
So there were some rumblings before we left for spring break. Some of my friends were like, oh, like you're going to go to Florida, like maybe you want to stay a little bit closer. Like there's this like COVID thing that might be affecting it. I was like, I'll just go see what happens. I went to Florida with my parents, and we went to Universal Studios. And there was like a shift, kind of. We're like, okay, there are a lot of people here. They're all wearing masks. People are just kind of starting to distance themselves, and it was fine. And then we went to a beach, and we were supposed to go to a Braves spring training game. And the day before, it got canceled. I'm like, what? That's crazy. And I thought I was about to get stranded in Florida because, I mean, left and right flights were being canceled.
Right.
It's like, oh, God. So luckily, I was able to get on a flight, get back to Pittsburgh, and they extended our spring break a week. So, okay, we're just going to figure out what to do because we can't, everything's shutting down. We can't go back into in the classroom. So over a 2-week period, our entire law school administration had to switch from fully in-person to remote, just like that. It was a very strange time. I mean, I remember like the first Zoom classes that we would have, and our professors were like, this is weird for us. Like, we've never done anything like we've FaceTimed on our phones, but we've never had to teach something online. And it was strange. And our second semester actually got switched to pass fail. So we didn't have grades for our second semester, which
pass or fail.
Yeah. Yep. It got switched to pass fail. So you had to get a C or something to pass. I passed all of them. And then it was also really, really tricky for internships.
Okay.
Because they tell you your first summer internship is very important. Because usually if you want to go into big law, that's when you get like an internship over the summer, and then that'll, switch to a partner, like, you'll be a junior associate, all that stuff. So that's kind of what puts you on that track.
Okay.
I was interviewing at different law firms, and like either right before my interview was scheduled or, like a week or two after, they'd be like, actually, we're not having an internship program this summer. So there were plenty of places that did that, I mean, it was a nightmare. I mean, so now we're all like, okay, well, we now have a gap on our resume for grades because it's pass fail. And now we're going to have to have a gap on our resumes because no one can get a job. There are no internships.
Right.
Luckily, I interned at a nonprofit in Pittsburgh. I was in Atlanta, so I was fully remote, but got to help a nonprofit out, which it's River Life, an awesome organization. Mm-hmm. So I was so lucky to find that. I had a great time. And
but you're actually home now in Atlanta during all this.
Home in Atlanta.
So
getting on Zoom.
Wait, let me back this up. So at what point did you say, well, I'm going to go to Atlanta? Is that when they shut down the classrooms?
So I got back from spring break, and then because they extended it a week, and they said, okay, we're going to be fully remote for the rest of the semester. Okay. And I said, okay, I'm going to go home because I thought, I was like, and a lot of my friends started going home. I had a roommate whose family lived in DC at the time, and she was like, yeah, like I'm going to go home too. Like, there's no point in me being here because we couldn't go to the libraries, we couldn't do anything, so I would just be in my apartment by myself, and that's it. So I was like, I'm going to go home, and it'll make more sense. I can actually have some human contact. Sure. And plus, we didn't know how long it would last. We're like, oh, like I could be home for, just the end of the semester and come back for the summer. And then a month turned into the entire summer. So it was a very tricky, weird transition time because everyone just was kind of forced to reposition their whole lives. And it was weird.
Did you know anyone that was, let's say, 2 years ahead of you that had to deal with their final year with the pandemic? And I wonder how that unfolded for them.
I wasn't terribly close with a bunch of the 3Ls, but
That's weird.
It was weird. Like, it was very weird. I mean, some of them, were my TAs for different classes and stuff. Sure. And luckily, most of them already had jobs lined up, but not everyone does when they graduate law school. So that was very difficult for them. And then also the bar exam. I mean, having to it's always been an in-person exam, and some states were waiving the bar exam. Like, okay, if you pass law school, we're not going to make you take the bar exam.
Wait,
and it was
what?
Yeah, some states were just waiving the bar exam.
Wait, back up.
Yeah.
Some states automatically just
they
awarded attorneyships or whatever, and just right, really?
Yeah, they waived the bar exam. They're like, okay, you don't have to take the bar since. Yeah, we can't transition to it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, there's a collection of folks in courtrooms right now that shouldn't be, maybe kind of not in there. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, it was really crazy. I mean, I do not envy those people at all because graduating law school is exciting but stressful enough because, I mean, the bar exam is not a fun exam to take nor easy to prep for. Mm-hmm. And it got pushed back, so I forget when they actually, because it's normally in July, the end of July. I don't remember when they actually ended up taking it. Like, it kept getting pushed back multiple months so that they could prep and get everything.
Was that, in those instances, was that done remotely?
I think the bar exam was remote, but I can't remember if the 2020 bar exam was remote or if they just pushed it back far enough that it was in person.
Okay.
Because whenever I took it in 2022, we still had to wear masks the whole time.
Damn.
Yeah.
So when you took your first position out of law school, I mean, it was still in a COVID era, right? So you were going to work every day with a mask on. Is that right?
By the time...
Somewhat or not?
No. Because by the time, I mean, I didn't come in from an interview with a mask or anything like that. I mean, Cozza Law is so small. They weren't worried. I had a mask on me just in case, but I was like, okay, like just in case, like they're all wearing masks and I can throw it on.
You might not get the job if you stuck that mask on.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, all right. Never know what you're walking into.
So, yeah, it just fascinates me, that whole era, because I podcasted through the pandemic, but they unwind people's unique stories in their industries. I've just heard so much wild stuff, and that I mean, finishing law school during the pandemic just seems like a flippin' nightmare. It
was definitely a very weird and strange time. I mean, everyone says that.
You ever blink and say, like, I can't believe I went through that? Did we actually go through that?
100%. I mean, like, all the time, I'm just, like, especially, like, retelling it, because I haven't, like, kind of talked to anyone about, the pandemic, like, just in the middle of my first year of law school.
Yeah.
And it's just, I still can't wrap my head around it.
So, why law? Like, do you have a story as to, I don't know, something that struck you when you were younger? Did you decide on this later?
I decided on it later. So whenever I started undergrad, I wanted to be an engineer. I was going to do it. My dad's an engineer. I've always loved math and science. And I was like, this is perfect. I would love to do that. So I went to University of Maryland, go Terps. And I wanted to do engineering. I wanted to do chemical engineering. And I was taking my engineering classes, and I liked them. I mean, I wasn't excelling at them, but I was enjoying them. I was enjoying what I was learning. And it was probably, I think, halfway through or maybe the beginning of my sophomore year. My dad was asking me, he's like, okay, so you've had a full year of classes under your belt. You started your second year. What kind of engineer, like, what do you want to do? What job do you want to do? It's like, oh. I don't know. I just thought that. I was like, oh, I like math. And so he was like, okay, well, like, you could do this. You could do that. Yeah. And he was, like, giving me all of these different options. I was like, none of those sound appealing. I was like, I just kind of want to, like, sit in a room and, like, solve problems all day. He's like, really? Well, I don't think that any of these, like, engineering things are really going to pan out for you. I was like, okay, you're right. Like, I don't really like any of that. So he's like, okay, let's think of some alternate things. And I said, well, I really like history, and I'm pretty good at writing. What if I try, like, being an attorney? That's like, I think that's an excellent idea. It's like, really? It's, yeah, you're always arguing. It's like, oh, okay, thanks, Dad. So, I think that was a very backhanded way of being like, you will be good at this, but it's because you're an asshole. It's like, cool. Yeah, and so then I finished the first semester of my sophomore year, finished with engineering classes, and then switched halfway through to government and politics major, and then I minored in art history.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
See, so people say having a good history background in college sets you up for a law degree. Is that true? Hard to say.
It is. I mean, in law school, you have so many people from different backgrounds. I think that because I enjoyed, like, reading and kind of, not necessarily storytelling, but kind of storytelling, I think that piques your interest, and then being able to write and write
part of it, huh?
and write persuasively. That is the biggest kind of thing. Like, because anybody can write, but engineers write very differently than
Correct.
History majors and attorneys do. So it was getting that background in persuasive writing was very helpful.
See, I think that writing component is not thought of very often in the public in regards to attorneys. I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either. I think it's all reading and arguing, like, or, public speaking. Yes. Exactly. But it's
correct.
I mean, 90% of most attorneys' jobs is writing.
And
that's all. Yeah. That's what you do.
Did you predetermine that you wanted to go and be in business law as opposed to litigation?
Definitely. Yeah. I definitely 100%. Like, I always knew that once I decided on law, I was like, okay, I want to do contracts and I want to do deals and stuff like that. I didn't want to do litigation. Just because I like to argue doesn't mean I like to argue in front of people and be judged on my arguing. So I didn't want to do that. And I also, I don't like all the red tape of courtrooms because it's very, I mean, it's
They're
just
procedural.
exactly. And that I just think is kind of dumb. So I was like, I want to sit in a room all day and I want to read contracts and I want to write contracts. And that's what I do right now. And I absolutely love it. It's
Yeah.
worked out.
And again, I think the public doesn't have a good grip on the different kinds of law that's practiced. I think that we still think of lawyers, a lot of people, even my generation or older, think of lawyers as, and there's nothing wrong with that, but you think of the man or the lady who hangs the shingle, a general practitioner, almost like a physician.
Yeah.
And they do everything.
We technically are doctors, so.
Yes, you are a jurist, doctor,
Exactly.
right? But they do a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. But I'm saying I think when you have a specialized attorney, that it's not on the forefront of the public's mind.
Definitely. I get a lot of questions. People ask, oh, you're an attorney. I was like, yeah, like I'm a corporate attorney, do transactional work, this and that. And they're like, oh, well, like how often are you in court? Like, never. I am never in a courtroom. Like we have a litigation department and they're usually not in court either. So some people just can't really wrap their head around like, but you can go to court if you want. I'm like, well, technically, yes. And so I can't go to I can't go to federal court, but yeah, I technically could. They're like, oh, then why don't you? I'm like, well, because that's not what I want to do.
See how much confusion there is?
A lot of confusion.
And you think it's because of the entertainment shows and all that
I think that definitely contributes to it. I mean, you think of My Cousin Vinny and you think of the TV shows. And I mean, hey,
it wasn't the first movie I thought of, but I get it.
I love My Cousin Vinny. That's one of my
Marissa
absolute...
Tomei, right?
Oh, my biological clock. I love that movie so much. It's incredible.
That's why she wanted to be an attorney. It was that movie.
It was Marissa Tomei. Yep, they're right.
Yeah, I think the public hears attorney. I know I did as a younger person. It was like courtrooms. You think attorney, courtrooms, judge, prison.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, that delineation between civil and criminal is a big thing.
Very
and again, it's lost, I think, on a lot of the public.
Yes. It definitely is. Yeah, I actually, whenever I was in in undergrad, one summer I interned at the Montgomery County District Attorney's Office. And I would never go into criminal law. I mean, I spent most of my summer listening to like jail phone calls. And I mean, you're seeing.
Wait.
I have stories.
Wait. You had to listen to jail phone calls.
Yep. So whenever inmates would make any calls, I would have to listen to them in case they said something
Did you guys
incriminating.
record them?
Yeah. And there's a message at the beginning of every phone call that says, this is being recorded, all that stuff.
Because they lose all their rights of privacy when you go there, correct?
Yes. Yeah. But most of them. Yeah. And
Okay.
so that it's saying like your phone calls are being recorded, all this stuff. And then I had to, the little intern Emma had to listen to them and oh my.
That's great.
Ooh,
Okay.
There was some stuff.
Yeah. So what kind of stories you got, Emma?
All right. The absolute best one I have is there was this inmate and he was talking to his lady. And
He was talking to his woman.
Talking to his woman. And he was getting all flustered and all mad at her. He's like, rah, 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 like, oh, you bitch, you suck, da da da. And he hangs up. And then his next call, because you can see the call log. His next call, he's talking to a different woman.
Oh, they get multiple calls.
Yes. He gave it like a credit or whatever. And so once
okay.
So his next call, it was to a different woman. And he's like, oh, man, your daughter's being such a bitch. And I was like, oh, it's the mom of the woman he's just talking to. And then they proceeded to have phone sex.
Oh, you got
on the phone call. I was like,
the mother?
Yes, the mother. I was just sitting there
of
like,
his woman.
Who is his baby mama as well. So it was something else. And I'm like, it is 10:30 on a Tuesday and I'm listening to this.
But she stayed on that entire call.
Oh my God. I'm just sitting there, like my face is just getting bright red. I'm like, I was 20 maybe, just sitting there like, oh God.
Oh my God, that's hysterical.
Yeah, and so I did not take any notes for that call.
So, I mean, so every jail conversation has been recorded.
Yep. Yeah, it was.
Now, you're listening to this live.
No. They're recorded.
Okay,
yeah, so I'm listening to all the recordings.
So it's like you could jump on there halfway through the conversation.
Yeah, that would not be good. Yeah. No, I'm listening to the recordings, and they're usually, because it's just, for the inmate the case that we're working on, and it was
So what else about criminal law did you not like?
You aren't
the system?
seeing, I mean, that doesn't help, but you're not seeing the best of humanity. You're like every day you go into work and it's somebody stabbed this person, or I mean, God forbid, it has something to do with the kid, and it's it's depressing. And I mean, I also just, I never was very interested in kind of the criminal law. I've always wanted to do something more like maybe structured as the way, like just, you know, like documents and contracts and stuff like that.
Kind of take the moral equation out of it.
Exactly. A little bit. I mean, like I'm more than happy to, you know, donate to nonprofits and stuff like that. But I was not interested in, especially because I'm not interested in litigation, and criminal is
all litigation.
All litigation. So I wasn't interested.
Let me get your thoughts on that moral dilemma that criminal defense attorneys have to struggle with. Mm-hmm. So I'll give you a scenario. So let's say I was a young criminal defense attorney and I got presented with a potential case, and I'm like looking at all the evidence. I've talked to you know, my potential client customer, and I, in my heart of hearts, believe that he in this instance, he absolutely did it. He stabbed that woman. Mm-hmm. Am I obligated? I'm not obligated to take the case, correct? So the rules of professional responsibility allow, if it's some kind of conflict, if it's either personal or, you know, like a outside conflict that would prevent you from fully advocating for your client, then you can request the judge, like, oh, I'm sorry, like I have to excuse myself, I can't represent this person. If you're a public defender, then you get assigned clients, and so you don't really have that much of an option. But if you're like, okay, like this is just either so repulsive to me that I cannot perform my job because I won't be able to do it. Happens, huh?
Yeah, but if you can, then you can ask to be excused, and the judge can grant that.
I think back when I was younger, and there was the OJ trial in 94, 95, something like that. Mm-hmm. And I honestly, this was the first time I really was able to, like, as an average Joe, take a look inside the real courtroom. Yeah. And I'm looking at O.J. Simpson's attorneys, and I'm going, inside, some of them might believe that he absolutely did this. Mm-hmm. But they have to put a show on because the duty they have to their customer, their client, and get him, quote unquote, off from the charges. And that just really always struck me as being just not only insincere, but just what a effed up line of work that you have to go in there and lie to yourself so you could do your job because it's lucrative financially, I'm sure, right? In that circumstance, yes. I think that at least kind of how I can kind of justify it is it's not necessarily for your client, it's for the system, because an adversarial system has been proven to be the best. I mean, it's not perfect, it's obviously flawed, but it's the best system to get the truth, you know, like, and that's how you get justice. And I mean, if you just every time you're like, wow, like this is a bad person, like you don't know that. So let's prove it. Let's get let's lay all the facts out there. Let's do everything. And I mean, everyone has the right to a fair trial. And it's more of a respect for the system, I think, than necessarily for the client. So let's say I'm this young defense attorney. So I'm gonna put you on the spot, and I go in there, and my client tells me that he did it, but he says, I'm pleading not guilty. I want you to get me off this. You're going to work for me. And I mean, let's say that something procedurally went askew with the arresting officer and they've got an angle now to use. But he looks you in the eye and goes, but yeah, I did it. I don't give a shit. I'll tell you, I did it. You can't say that scenario doesn't happen.
I'm sure it does.
I'm sure it happens.
Yeah, I'm sure it does.
Number one, would I have an out to get out of that? Could I dismiss myself from that case or ask to be dismissed from that case if I was a public defender? I would.
Yeah. I believe so. Yes. I do not know all the rules of criminal procedure. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of the number one rule of being a criminal attorney. Never ask if they did it. You're like, I don't want to know. I don't want to know.
Tell you.
Yeah.
Some people are crazy.
Some people just, they'll flat out say it. Then, yeah, I mean, you can ask to be excused and all that stuff, and you can't go into the courtroom and lie. So if somebody asks you, or if your client says, I'm going to lie on the stand, then you have an obligation to say, like, you can't do that. And if they do, like, lie on the stand, you have an obligation to come forward and say, Your Honor, he lied. Like I know this to be not true.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's not, you're not blinded by your loyalty to your client. You know, like you still have to be fair to everyone involved. And
Sure.
again, that's where the respect for the system kind of comes into play, and not as necessarily focused on the client.
I won't put you on the spot anymore on this criminal stuff. It always just fascinates me. They're like, what? Because I think about those dilemmas, right? You're charged to quote unquote represent somebody and try to quote unquote get them. I used to hate that word off, but get them out of a sticky situation legally. And if you know they did it because they tell you in private, that's attorney-client privilege, right? So you can't. What's the other privilege that is non-interferable? Was that the husband-wife?
Yeah, so spousal privilege.
Spousal privilege.
Yeah, so if you find out like the information, and it varies by the state, but normally it's if you find out information while you're like during the marriage, then the wife or the spouse is not going to be required to testify.
They can't be compelled.
If they would like to, they're more than welcome to. But if they don't want to, they can't be compelled. But it's only for information that happened during the marriage. So if they were married for 5 years and this instance happened before, you can that they can be compelled to testify about that. If it happened, if their marriage ended after 5 years, and this then it can happen after. Like if it's something about after or before, you can be compelled to testify. But if you're currently married and it happened during your marriage, or you don't even have to be currently married, but yeah, it's.
Why do you think that exists?
The reason they give in law school is because they don't want to like drive a wedge in between the husband and wife, like so they don't want to force someone to, have to admit something about someone that they love. And I mean, I think that's
interesting.
I think that God, I forget the phrase that they use. It's not like domestic like peace, but it's some like kind of like scenario like that where they don't want to interfere with that relationship so much that it could damage it if they're not willing to testify about it.
And that would go for any marriage, like same-sex marriage, whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Things I learn. I'll tell you what's why I hang around the Cozza Law Group. I learn all kinds of stuff.
I only know these things because I took the bar exam, and you have to learn them for the bar exam. I would not know this for any other reason.
Well, in regards to business law, what do you think the number one apprehension that you see when people come initially to work, to hire you, to interview you, to talk about potentially working with you? What do you see as the number one apprehension?
I think that...
Or is it just a misunderstanding of what you actually do?
I think that plays into it. I think the biggest apprehension is, well, why do I need you now? Because no one wants to come to you if things haven't gone wrong yet. And so that's, I think, the biggest apprehension. So if you're starting a business, you're doing something, they're like, oh, okay, I need help forming this entity. Okay, cool. But then you say, oh, well, like, you can have employees, you need this, X, Y, Z. And then they're like, oh, well, let's wait until it, becomes a thing. You're like, well, no, you need to put these like structures in place now so that you're not going to be caught up in a bunch of, BS later on. So I think that's probably the most apprehension that we see is kind of, oh, like, well, I'll just do it down the line, as opposed to why do I need to do it right now?
So pay me the appropriate amount now to set it in place, or pay me more to unwind all the bullshit later.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And that's what we try to tell people. Like, we're not trying to rip you off. You're not just like some cash cow to us. Like, we're genuinely trying to help you have the best business you possibly can. And that requires being proactive. And if you're not, then like we'll help you down the line. But I mean, it's going to be more difficult and cost you more money and just be a bigger headache.
Yeah, and that speaks to human nature. I mean, it just
definitely
we all do it. I mean,
oh yeah.
I could tell some stories. What do you think are ways that you can mitigate that? Like, you guys.
That's $1 million question. That's what we're trying to figure out.
No, you guys seem to have a lot of marketing geared toward, the proper preparation saves money down the line, right?
Yeah, I think that probably. I mean, honestly, like the speaking events and stuff that we do, like just telling people these stories and saying like, this is what has happened to people in the past, and just making them aware of, oh, like I didn't realize it could be that bad, like, or it would cost that much money to fix. And also just kind of educating the public, being like, these processes aren't difficult to put in place, but fixing them later on, that's where it gets hard.
You said public speaking. I know that the Cozza Law Group, spurred on nationally by Rocco, does a lot with public speaking, engagement with business business clubs and networking groups, the chambers and things like that. It just gives you an opportunity to get in front of people that may have a use for your service. Like, how do you feel about public speaking? Do you enjoy it?
I used to not enjoy it. I think that I'm getting more comfortable. It's more of like a psych myself out kind of thing. I think that after seeing what Rocco does and kind of learning, we're not going to these public speaking events to get clients. Like, it's a byproduct and it helps. That's great. But we go there to educate people and to help people. Like, that is, when you walk in the door, if you're trying to make money, people can tell. But we walk in the door and we're trying to help people. Like, we just want to inform people and, again, just help them save money down the line. So I think that having that outlook on it has made me more positive to public speaking. So I'm like, oh, well, I enjoy helping people. I want to help people. Public speaking can do that. All right, it's not too bad.
That's where the focus is at.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's it's just anything less than that today in 2023 to me just reeks of like desperation.
Yeah.
But it's so prevalent because I think a lot of firms in a lot of different industries are just desperate. You can see it's written all over their face and their people's face.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's uncomfortable.
It is. And I think that especially like with how like just recorded and like everything is these days, like people are always posting videos themselves. Like, you can tell when it's disingenuous. Like, you can tell when people have an ulterior motive. And that's one of the things that I love about Rocco and Cozza Law Group. We don't have an ulterior motive. We're literally just here to help people. And it's so refreshing, just in society in general. But I think also especially in the legal field. So
I see not all, I see probably most of the social media that you folks do, but I am not, the algorithm that I have does not spit other firms' social medias out there. Are other firms in town as engaged as you folks are? Do you see any?
I try to stay off social media as much as possible, but I would think so. I mean, Rocco has all the numbers and all that stuff. And I don't know if there's kind of like a firm that he's seen and's been like, oh, I wish that, like, I want us to be doing that.
Sure.
I think it's just kind of like all these different ideas especially from different industries too, not just law firms.
So would you say that social media is not really entrenched to this point yet in law, even in Pittsburgh maybe?
I think that probably some of the smaller firms, it is. I think the bigger firms rely on their name.
Okay.
So they probably don't need to focus on, doing these smaller things. But I mean, there are these like, the TikTok lawyers and people, kind of putting on a gimmick and saying, this is how you get out of your underage drinking charge and like all that stuff. And
those folks are out there. I haven't seen that. I don't have TikTok, so maybe that's why.
I only downloaded TikTok for our firm TikTok challenge, which I won, by the way. Thank you very much. And I have not been on it since. So no, but I've had friends who are on TikTok and they're like, yeah, like there's these guys who they dress up in their like belt buckles and their cowboy boots and they're like the cowboy attorneys and they're just doing
cowboy attorneys.
I have no idea if that's what they're actually called, but they're
that's
like, yeah,
thing,
and it's a thing, and like they're all gimmicky and they want to like these little like quick tips about again like weed charges or underage drinking and stuff like that. So it's there's always going to be people doing that.
Those, Realtors are out there doing stuff like that too. I get it. We're all a little guilty of self-promotion. I mean, I'm all for self-promotion, but it's I did a stupid gimmick years ago. Free tacos was purchase of house, and I put this on the rider signs, and it wasn't original. I got it from someone in Texas that was doing it, and then it just kind of worked. And I didn't think it would work.
It's because everyone loves tacos.
I know.
Everyone loves tacos.
I know. Yeah. It worked. And then it got like some little local press notoriety. I was like, oh. And then, of course, like everything else, when something does start to work, what do? Instead of keep doing it, keep making it better, we stop. Yeah, it's when you say you're not on social media much, what is your opinion of social media? I mean, you're young enough to really, it's your generation. Yeah. It's catered to your demographic, right? Yeah. I mean, like, I remember, when I was in middle school, I had like a block Nokia phone. So it wasn't like as starting, I didn't start as young as, the newer generations, but I definitely remember in like 7th and 8th grade,
when like Snapchat started to be a thing, and then because Facebook was like around, but it was for older people, and we're like, oh, but like we want to be on there. And so I kind of remember it like slowly, like just especially in college, that's when it just really took off. And it was, I think I was a little bit later to the game than some of my peers, but I'm not a fan of it just because.
Talk about why.
I think people can just be so fake on it. You know, I mean, like there are very few genuine moments that you see on social media. And I mean, I'm guilty of, you know, that doom scrolling. I'll be on Facebook and just a video pops up and I'm like,
scrolling.
Yeah, which I love that term because I'm like, that's exactly what it is. Like you're just sitting there like, oh doom. Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, I see a picture of a puppy. I'm like, oh, that's really cute. And so and then they have my algorithm, and then it can be, it has its benefits. I think it's really great for the promotion of small businesses. For
marketing, yeah.
I mean, it's incredible. I mean, the things that you can do on social media, it cuts your cost, in half. And it's a great tool in that sense. But it's also, I mean, you have to take it with a grain of salt because there are so many just insincere things and just, I don't like what it does to people. So I like the idea of, I can promote my business for a fraction of the cost, but I don't like how it makes people so self-absorbed and self-centered. Like, I don't give a shit that you had grilled cheese for lunch. Like, I don't need to see a picture of it. I really don't care. I'm sure it was great. Everyone loves grilled cheeses, but when everyone thinks that they should be an influencer and like everyone cares like exactly what they're doing all day, I think that's a little ridiculous.
Why do you think we're so susceptible to that?
That's a good question. I think everyone likes being liked. Once you see that little heart button and you get a heart, you're like, oh.
So it's like a dopamine hit.
I think so. I think that's kind of what it is. I think that once you realize, this makes me feel good about myself because, 315 people think that I looked good. Like, and you're.
So, like, the total of likes is like some kind of weird currency.
I think so. And I remember in college, like, definitely thinking about that. Like, I would be like, my roommate's picture got this many likes and mine got this many. And I never obsessed over it, but it definitely.
So it's competitive then.
Kind of, yeah. And it gives you that kind of weird competitive edge. And then I remember maybe a couple of years ago, there was a period of time where they took the, you couldn't see the number of likes that other people got on their pictures. And people threw a fit. They were freaking out. They're like, no, I need to know. And like, that's the whole point of social media. So you can compare yourself to others and see how you're doing, like, and compare to them. And I don't like that.
Yeah. See, so I went kicking and screaming to Instagram like 4
so did
years
I.
ago.
So did I.
But it's made more people aware of the podcast, and I've also used it as an opportunity to throw positivity out there when I can. So I like it. I'm not great at it, but I immediately chose the option to hide like totals and counts because it's just not interesting to me.
Yeah.
And I figured, let's see if I can get engagement through what I'm putting out there, so be it. But I don't want it to be based off anything besides that.
No, that makes sense.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But when I tell people that I've done that, why do you do that? Why do you do that? You need to look at your statistics and see what posts are hitting and what are. I'm like,
yeah.
I mean, I get it for business. If it really was. If there was a significant or serious game plan we were putting into place to generate this amount of money over this amount of period of time, you got to play the metric game. But I think it does more harm than good.
I think so too. Yeah, I think so too. I think that like it serves a good purpose for like keeping up with people. Like, I mean, I have family that I haven't seen in years, but now I know what they're doing and what they're up to, which I like that aspect of it because I would never like stay connected with them. So I love that aspect of it. But I don't love kind of, again, like the competitive edge and then, it's not all rainbows and sunshine like it looks, and it's.
Why do you think, let me ask you this. Why do you think we're just so adverse to sharing the bad as much as the good? Because we are pretty adverse to doing that.
I would say
for the most part. I mean, you always have drama-laden people, right? I get it, sure.
Yeah.
But in terms of, we just real hesitant to show negativity.
Well, I think it plays into the kind of the competitiveness. Like, you want to be better than your neighbor. You're like, You don't want to show the bumps and bruises along the way, or if you do show them, then it's like, oh, I overcame these and that's why I'm so awesome and great now. Like, okay, cool. But I think that no one wants to share the bad stuff because no one likes talking about bad stuff because it's hard. It can be very hard, and it's not glamorous to show all the negativity that you have in your life. It's so much easier to put out something positive and then strive to attain it. Say like, oh, like this is like I'm going to look ideal on paper, and then like, oh, I'll get there one day kind of thing. So I don't know if it's motivational for some people. I don't know if it's just I want to look better than other people and I never have a hard time, that kind of thing. I don't know.
I had a friend sit right where you're sitting and tell me about 2 years ago the reason why she believes people generally only show the good stuff is she said, well, equate it to like a photo album. If in the olden times when there was like real photo albums, you would never take pictures of like your worst moments.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's kind of like a snapshot of like your good shit, but you're not going to put an album together of your worst.
My worst memories.
So when she said that, it made a lot of sense to me, but it really is not real authentic.
No, I don't think it is.
You know, when you hear the word authentic bounced around, because we've done it a lot on this show, like what's that word mean to you?
I think personally, authentic means all of it. It means the good, the bad, the ugly, everything in between. And it means telling the truth to other people and to yourself. And that's how you become like purely authentic, because you have to be able to recognize, okay, these are my faults, or these are the every angle of it. I think that's being authentic.
Yeah, I crave it. I crave it in my relationships with other people. Now, you can't go extract it from other people. You know, they have to offer that up, of course. But I just think it's amazing when we find enough humility to admit our mistakes, or to laugh at ourselves, or to show our worst sides, especially when it's in a story showing how we've overcome and we've changed. But man, it just seems like finding humility is not high on our list. And maybe it's always been this way, but definitely in the internet era, especially the last 12, 13 years of social media, we'll die on that hill with our beliefs, even when someone's shown us evidence that we're wrong.
Yeah. The lack of conversation is so upsetting, because you're like, oh, well, I'm just going to find people in my camp that support me and that believe what I believe, and then I'm just going to further entrench myself. And it's just, that is,
and you probably
so
see, I would probably guess in your field, you know, obviously to get through law school is impressive. You probably see a bunch of your compadres that are highly intelligent people. But when it comes to a certain belief, or whether it's philosophy, political philosophy, religion, whatever, people, like, they'll die on that hill with that belief, although it might be effing killing them.
Yeah, I think that sometimes people just get so caught up in, one, being right, but two, because I think that we all I think society in general just puts a big emphasis on staying true to yourself and staying true to your beliefs. So much so where you can't admit fault sometimes. You know, they're like, oh, well, I'm going to dig my heels in, and like, this is the hill I'm going to die on.
Healthy.
It's not. Like, you always have to be open to other ideas. And I mean, once you close yourself off to other ideas, then you're never going to learn anything else in your life.
Yeah. We just seem to, we're not comfortable with being wrong.
Oh, no. It took me a while to start getting comfortable with that idea. And I think especially, like, because there's this idea of lawyers, like, oh, like, you know, they go through everything with a fine-tooth comb, and they're, you know, like, everything's going to be perfect. And I mean, obviously. And I mean, we like, our jobs are very detail-oriented, but I sent a draft of a document to a client one time, and I was like, oh yeah, like, it's a draft, you know, like, this is just put some stuff together. This is for you to review to make sure that everything that you wanted in there is in there, not the finished product or whatever. And I was going through it with her, and she was like, oh, like, oh, this word, like it was like entitle instead of entitled. I was like, oh, yep, sorry. Like I'll make a note of that. She goes, oh, I figured, attorneys were perfect. And I was like, well, obviously not.
Wait, she said that?
Yeah, she was like, oh, I just figured, I was just like, I'm surprised to find a spelling mistake. I'm like, well, I'm human. Like, yeah, I mean, I told you this was not the finished draft. Like, yeah, of course. Like, I'm human. I'm going to make mistakes. Like, I got fast fingers. Like, so it was.
For sure.
Yeah, but I think that there's just, this idea of, oh, like, they're never wrong. Like, yeah, I'm wrong all the time.
Yeah, there's a mentality that goes, I think, the public has it sometimes in regards to professions, that they are hard to obtain, and once you do, you have this magical power to never make a mistake.
Yeah.
The doctors probably feel this too.
Oh, I bet. Their pressure, they have someone's lives in their hands. And
Yeah.
I mean, I got a contract. And yeah, they had big ramifications. But I definitely think that with certain professions, there is that, like, oh, well, you're on this pedestal now and you cannot step off it. You cannot mess up or anything like that, or you're going to be heavily criticized for it. And I mean, sometimes there are things that you absolutely cannot mess up. Totally get that. But at the end of the day, no one's perfect. Like, we're never going to be, this ideal, incredible person, but I'm trying.
Yeah, for sure. And that I've said this on this show, and I've had guests kind of echo the same theme, that the world could really change overnight if a good many of us would just be humble enough to admit when we're wrong. And not that we're even going to change our course, but become less caustic defending beliefs that we've already been shown and we already kind of know are wrong.
Yeah.
Just back away from them. Even if you don't turn against the prior belief.
Yeah.
Just back away.
Exactly.
But man, it's just, I don't see any chance of that happening on a broad scale.
No, I mean, I really wish it would. I wish that people were more open to discourse and discussion and, okay, you're not going to change my mind. Okay, cool. I'm not trying to change your mind, but I just want you to hear kind of my point of view. And as long as you understand my point of view, then we're good.
Yeah.
Like there are some things that you're right. Like I have a fundamental belief about this one thing, and you're probably not going to change my mind, but I would like to hear your opinion of it, like your side, like, because that's how you grow. That's how you understand your side more deeply and more thoroughly. Because if you never question what you believe in, then it's fake. It's not fake, but it's not as meaningful. Like I think that you should always be questioning things and reanalyzing. Like you don't have to have the same belief now as you did 20 years ago.
Yeah, I was taught when I was young that part of maturity was being comfortable with the fact that you may need to change what you believe to be true.
Yeah,
being okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, I think that's a huge part. And I think that it took me a while to realize that because, like, I think growing up, I had this idea, like, oh, like, I'm just going to be this, like, strong, independent person who's, like, firm in their beliefs and never wavering and all that stuff. And it's like, okay, that's great. But I feel like at some point I kind of went to, to a fault. Like, I was becoming closed-minded. And that's not a way to go through life. And I don't know if I can pinpoint the exact time, but I think it was probably, like, I think it might have been like in sophomore year of college, because that's when I was like, oh, like, engineer, going straight, doing all this stuff. And then realized, oh, actually, let me start questioning why I'm actually doing this, what I want from it. And that really, really changed my perspective on a lot of stuff. And I think it's helped me grow a lot.
Yeah. I can share similar stories where I look back and I say, wow, I had something happen in life that really turned me upside down for a second and broke core beliefs I had. And like, wow, that's things I believe to be true are not true. Yeah. But then accepting that and trying to figure out life after that, I think was so flippin' rewarding.
Right.
I didn't see it at the time.
Yeah.
But soon when you reflect back on, like, holy crap, I figured that out.
Mm-hmm.
What was I thinking before, right? But
exactly.
You need life to smack you in the face. But I really hurt when I see what I believe to be really good people that I know in my sphere, my extended sphere, that literally become so close-minded. And you kind of always expected that decades prior, I think, when it comes to like politics or religion. I get it. But when you see it spread into everything else, it's like, wow, you're missing so much of life because you're just not willing to ingest another point of view.
Yeah. I think that's definitely a very big issue, which I do not have an answer for solving. But
no, we're not solving all the world's problems tonight. But
absolutely not. I'm going to need some bourbon to do that. Trust me. My dad and I always joke whenever, like, for every holiday, we'll stay up late drinking, having a good time, and solving all the world's problems as always. And then the next morning, my mom's like, "Oh, like, what'd you guys solve? You guys were like, we solved everything, but we can't remember it. So that's the issue. So we got to try again tonight."
Yeah, the brown liquid will do that too, especially around the holidays.
Oh yeah.
yeah, causes amnesia.
A little bit.
Social media is not going anywhere.
No.
Do you think we've got too many platforms now? Or do you ever feel overwhelmed by it?
I think that personally, I don't feel overwhelmed because I've never been super into social media. So I have my apps that I look at, but I think that especially if you are in like the marketing kind of field, it must be super overwhelming. And I think that since joining Cozza Law Group, I've actually thought about marketing. I never really thought that attorneys would do that. It's never taught in law school really. I mean, there's probably some like business classes if you wanted to start your own firm, but it's not really something that is harped on or really emphasized. But I think it's super important because, I mean, attorneys, we're selling a service, we're selling ourselves. So marketing is extremely important. So I think that if you are kind of marketing focused, it's very overwhelming. I mean, you have two different types of Twitter now, and they're the same thing. I don't know. Like, it's just, I think that it's definitely overwhelming for people who are content creators because now it's so much more content that you have to think about and focus on and distribute. That's another reason why I don't want to do it.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. So the idea of entrepreneurship to me sure looks different today than it did 10, 20, 30 years ago. I mean, the concept is a lot different. The words bounced around so much now in social media.
Yeah.
The definition of the word is certainly up for debate.
A little bit.
Right? So you have to wade through that murky pool right now.
Yeah, definitely. I think that and I mean, I never really saw myself as an entrepreneur because in my head, like, growing up, I was like, oh, entrepreneur is someone who like goes and starts a business and does all these things and wears all these different hats and all that stuff. And I never really saw myself as doing that. I always saw myself as more like a part of a team as opposed to starting the team kind of thing. But I've learned that it's so much more than that. You don't have to go start your own business to be an entrepreneur. You can have that entrepreneurial spirit.
It's like a mindset, right?
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. It's focusing on and noticing different things and applying that to different areas of your life. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the attorneys at your firm, to my understanding, you folks cultivate an entrepreneurial mindset.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. 100%.
It's kind of a requirement there, right?
It really is. Like that's one of those baseline kind of requirements that you have to have, that you have to have that drive and that want and desire to keep furthering not just yourself personally, but the firm and all this. And I never saw myself in that type of setting, and I didn't know that I could kind of excel at that setting, but being in it, I think I've got the hang of it. Not fully, but I think I'm getting it. It. Hey, it'll be a year in October, so
Right on. Time moves fast.
It really does, but it's a very rewarding setting to be a part of because everyone shares that drive and that want to keep pushing, and I think that's missing from some other settings.
It's a different mindset completely.
Yeah.
I would agree, and I think it bewilders a lot of folks that are older, me included, from the generation, just because that's not how American business was really run prior.
Yeah.
It just wasn't. When you have a new client and you bring them in and they're having I don't know if I have the appropriate term, but I think it's called, is it an intake interview?
You get initial consultation, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Let's say they've done the initial intake verbally through phone, but now this is your first interview, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, when I look at what you do, that's got to be an incredible skill set because that initial conversation's got to be on. Right?
I think there is.
I'm trying to uncover goals, and everybody's
Yeah.
going to have a different level of how much they reveal, and
Yeah, it's a lot of listening and then knowing what questions to ask next. Because, I mean, people know that they need help sometimes. Like, some people know exactly what they need and they're come to you and you're like, all right, this is perfect, got everything. But some people just come to you because they don't know exactly what they need. And that's when it's really tricky, because you have to listen and you have to, like, I'd be able to identify those problems, and, we call it in law school issue spot. You have to be able to find those.
What's it called?
Issue spotting.
Issue spotting.
Yeah, so you'll get like a fact pattern, and you have to find, okay, like this is, the 3 issues that kind of pop up, and it's tricky, and it's not an easy skill to do. I'm definitely don't have it down, but I love watching Rocco and Matt do it, because it's incredible. Like, I'll be listening to the same exact conversation over the phone or in person, and be like, oh, okay, like they need this. I'll jot that down. And then they already have like 6 questions lined up. I'm like, I never would have thought of that. And it's like, I know I'll get there one day, but
Certainly.
It's definitely a lot of pressure on that that interview, because not only is, like, do you have to figure out what they need, but it's also, you have to, like, they're trusting you. Like, they're coming to you with their business, with something that's very personal and very important to them. And they're giving that. They're like, here, like, this, I'm trusting you to help me. And so now there's that responsibility to live up to that. And I think that it adds pressure, but I think that it also drives you to be like, okay, like, I'm going to give the best possible service I can for this person because they gave me that trust. And it's,
certainly.
Yeah.
That interview certainly will build the trust. And then through that trust, hopefully there's a long-term fruitful relationship for both sides. I mean, it's because it's not going to happen if the trust isn't there. Yeah,
exactly. If you can't give someone enough reassurance in those first couple conversations, then they're not gonna keep doing business with us. They're not gonna trust us with their baby, with their business, with their livelihood. I mean, it's a very unique and interesting experience to be a part of.
Do you see entrepreneurs that have a hard time, like, letting go of things? Is that a big problem?
Definitely. Oh yeah. I mean, if this has been like a passion project for someone, it's hard. And I mean, we're not trying to have people, let go of their whole, but sometimes you need to, like, okay, well, you've gotten this far, and that's incredible. That's awesome. But if you want to expand, if you want to grow, then you're going to have to, you're going to have to trust us. You're going to have to kind of loosen the reins a little bit. And that could be definitely very difficult for some people.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I shared my circumstance for so many times on this show, but I believe that my inability to let go of the lifestyle business and move beyond that through proper legal advice, had I done that, I might still be in that business. Who really knows? But there was those moments where which I'm sure, my point is, I'm sure I wasn't unique in this feeling, but I'm sure a lot of entrepreneurs feel like they know they kind of should be doing this.
Yeah.
But that's going to take a little bit of humility to bare my soul a little bit, and some money, and sometimes we don't do that.
Yeah. It's not an easy thing to ask someone to be vulnerable and trust you and also pay for it. Like, it's a tricky situation to be in, because you're like, we want to help, but we also have to charge you, and you're going to have to let go of some of that control. And so it's a very intricate relationship to kind of navigate.
Yeah, I looked at it as if I didn't have the appropriate business maturity to understand that in order for me to progress, I needed to grow up a little bit as an entrepreneur. And I'm sure that's I'm sure I wasn't alone in that. I'm sure that's a problem for people.
Yeah, I think so. I think definitely.
Yeah, and it probably isn't just in your field. It could be with accounting. It could be.
Oh yeah.
It could be a lot of different things. But I always thought that when Rocco would talk about, like, the intake phone call and then the initial interview and stress how important that was, I see the similarities between what you folks do in that regard in real estate. The first time I meet a client, I'm there talking at their house. There's a plethora of things that I'd like to find out, but you have to get them from all the things they're throwing at you.
Yep,
and
exactly.
it's really a maneuver to do it right.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. What do you love about the law?
That's a good question. I don't really think I ever think about, like, the law like that. I think I love I love practicing law.
Yeah, your particular practice of law.
Yeah, I
The
love.
law.
Well, then we always joke about like in law
The
school.
law.
It's like, what is the law? I love interacting with people. I've always really enjoyed that, and this gives me an avenue to interact with people and just, I don't know. There are things that are so intricate and so interesting because like the law as itself is just, this big scary thing, but there's so many tiny little baby details within it that are just fascinating. And then being able to kind of help people and interact with people while getting to explore these like awesome, intricate channels that exist. It's really, there's never a dull day because you're always doing something different.
Do you feel like part of the joy of your job might be giving folks peace of mind?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I mean, from my engineering background, I love problem solving. I love solving problems. It's rewarding. It's exciting. And the biggest problem that we have to solve is how do we give someone peace of mind? How do we make them feel okay and just help them take a breath and feel comfortable that something that they're building and creating is worthwhile and it's going to be prosperous. And definitely peace of mind is huge.
It's also a dance too, because you got to make sure that you don't push them into an uncomfortable position. It is their baby, right? They've got this little thing they've cultivated for all these years. And it's hard. You got to read the room. Yeah.
And to be fair, a large portion of our job is to make people uncomfortable. Like we're going to have to ask those uncomfortable questions. We're going to have to say, okay, well, but what if this happens? Are you prepared to, sell this or do this? And like, we kind of have to go down the worst case scenario, and no one likes having those conversations, but they're necessary to have. And so so we definitely have to be very careful with the dance. You have to make sure people feel comfortable and secure and give them peace of mind, but you're not going to get peace of mind unless we make you uncomfortable first. And then we're saying, okay, this makes you uncomfortable, but here's how we solve it and here's how we avoid that. And then we go back to the peace of mind.
Pittsburgh. Talk to me about Pittsburgh, being that you're from Atlanta. They call that Hotlanta, right?
It earns its title, man.
There was a upscale shopping area called Buckhead.
Mm-hmm. I live right next. My parents' house is right next to Buckhead.
That I used to go to on occasion. It's pretty rowdy up that way.
It can get a little rowdy. Yeah, the Buckhead bars are famous for the high schoolers,
for the what?
And the high schoolers and the young college kids. Not me, never me. No, I wasn't cool enough to do that. But my dad works in Buckhead, and it's not very far from my parents' house.
Yeah, Atlanta. That's a big metro area. I think I don't know if we really fully appreciate up in Pittsburgh how big Atlanta proper is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is funny. People will complain about the Pittsburgh traffic, and I try not to laugh too aggressively in their face because I've lived in both Atlanta and DC. I'm like, oh, sweet baby, you have no idea what traffic is. Park, like I've sat in traffic that has literally been a parking lot. Like you cannot move on the interstate at all. It is 4 lanes of just rows and rows of cars, and it's a nightmare.
In a prior life, I had a good friend who was a guitar huckster, and he had a little house in Dallas, Georgia.
Okay.
A little suburb outside of Atlanta. Okay. I went down and visited him, and we would hop in this pickup truck he had, and he would drive right through the heart of Atlanta to get to the other side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I remember us just sitting there. It had no air conditioning, of course, and it was the middle of summer. And we're just sitting in wall to wall, like 4 lanes, and just like, what am I doing?
It's a nightmare. It is a nightmare.
Yeah, it's just a fun city, though.
It is. Yeah, I like it a lot.
Definitely fun city. But talk to me about Pittsburgh, because here you sit.
Yeah.
All right. Best food in town.
Ooh.
That you've encountered.
I like so many different types of food. I love tacos. Best taco.
I'm not sure it's entirely a Pittsburgh thing.
It's not a Pittsburgh thing, but the best taco place in town is Taco TKO in downtown.
Someone else said that.
Incredible. Their queso is So good. It'll change your life. Delicious.
Oh, okay.
100%. Love it. I am a big brewery fan, so I love the breweries of Pittsburgh. And I make it a point to try to go to as many as possible. My favorite one is Southern Tier. I think they should become a sponsor so that we can have a little thing of Southern Tier.
Southern Tier, you like seeing that? You hearing that?
Come hang out.
Get a hold of me.
Oh, I love that place. Incredible food, great beer. I love sitting outside and having a good IPA, any kind of beer. Big fan.
Okay, best pizza you've had in town. A lot of pizza person.
I do. I like pizza, but it's all been like kind of. I had pizza Parma. I'm not exactly sure where that is. Pretty. They do like they'll do like kind of like specialty pizzas.
Right.
They have it was like a spinach feta and artichoke pizza. It was delicious. It was real good.
Okay, I'm not sure how Pittsburgh that is.
I promise it was very good. What is that? Oh, the Fuel and Fuddle in Oakland.
Was it?
Fuel and Fuddle.
Right.
It's right next to the law school. They have a pizza that has pierogi. It's a mashed potato pizza.
I'm aware.
And I was like, what is that? That is
Pretty
the craziest
brutal.
thing. The most shocking cultural shock moving to Pittsburgh was y'all put French fries on a salad. Why? I mean, I'm not complaining because it's delicious, but it's the weirdest
I've always thought
thing.
that was how things were done until I started to travel a little bit. And I always thought...
There's a steak and French fries.
Well, have you ever heard of a steak salad outside of Pittsburgh?
Yes, I've had steak. Yeah, I've had steak salads.
We will claim that we invented that, and it just spread.
I'm sure you did. But the Pittsburgh salad with French fries on it, really,
egg and ranch.
Yeah, I was like, this is the weirdest thing I've ever seen.
That's a thing. Yeah.
It was delicious though. The first one I ever had was at Hemingway's Cafe, right across from the law school. That is a dive bar.
Have you?
I love it.
Have you done Permanis?
Yes, I have
done
Permanis.
Do you like it or don't you like it?
I think it's delicious. I do prefer like a toasted bread, but the meat is delicious. I the coleslaw and the French fries, like it's just, I mean.
Especially when you're drunk.
Oh, yeah. So the first Permani sandwich I ever had, I was sober, and we had a criminal law class get rescheduled for a Friday. And so it was at like maybe 2:00 on a Friday. And my friends are like, oh, like we'll go to Permani's. You've never been. We'll go there first, and then we'll go to class. I was like, all right, sounds great. You know, I feel like a yinzer. Like, okay, let's do it. So we go to Permani's, and we come back. And the minute that class starts, we're all sitting there like, oh my God.
Coma.
Oh my Lord. I have never been more tired in my entire life. I'm sitting there like, I can't keep my eyes open. Like, and our lovely professor is, you know,
probably had 300 grams of carbohydrates.
Oh my God. He is this brilliant man. And he's like, don't worry, I know it's a makeup class, so I'm not going to like call on anyone. You can just raise your hand if you want to answer. And we're sitting in the back row like, oh my God. I think my friend started snoring. It was... Oh, but it was delicious, but I was so full. I went home and napped for the rest of the day.
Yeah, so you thought the beer was noteworthy. I guess now with all the little breweries, I get it. Because, I mean...
There are so many. I was so impressed.
There is. And in years prior, when someone would say beer, you would think like, oh, Iron City. Like, I don't think we really know
honestly, I like the Iron City.
Iron City Light or Iron City?
Iron City.
The real thing.
The real thing. Iron Heavy, if you will.
Oh,
I love sitting at a Pirates game, drinking my Iron City. That is beautiful view of the city. That's a good feeling right there. I got my Pirates koozie on.
Definitely like a yinzer now. Like, you're
full blown.
Like fully converted here.
I live right next to PPG, and I have I now have a Penguins jersey and a Steelers jersey. Don't have a Pirates jersey yet because my heart is with the Braves. But I have a Pirates hat, which I love.
So, you weren't a Falcons fan?
I'm not
a convenient Falcons fan.
I'm not an NFL fan. I love all sports. I love college football.
Living in this town and you don't like the Steelers, that might have to change.
I learned that very quickly. It's like, okay, and I would always say I'm not an NFL fan, so I don't really have an allegiance to a team. But
now you do.
Now I do, and now I have my Kenny Pickett jersey, and I'm good to go. I've been to 2 Steelers games, which is more than any. I don't think I've ever been to a Falcons game. So, but hey, I love college football and I love baseball. Is
watching football indoors weird? I've never done that. To my knowledge, I've never.
I'm trying to think if I've.
Is it different?
I've only been the Bends where the Falcons play. I've only seen Atlanta United, their soccer team there. I haven't been to a football game inside. I don't think I've ever been to a football game inside.
Yeah, just the whole concept of that's a little different.
Yeah. But
What
no,
am I saying? I've been doing the Indianapolis game. Lucas Oil Field. I was there. It was indoors. Yeah, it just seems
I don't like
weird.
watching baseball indoors. I hate
That's
doing
weird
that.
too.
It's
I've
weird. I don't
seen
like
that.
it. Don't like it.
Yeah, that's really strange.
Yeah.
Toronto and Houston used to have domes, in Minneapolis. Yeah, it's a different thing inside sports. I mean, hockey, you expect that.
Of course. It would melt.
Although there is what they call a Winter Classic.
The Winter Classic. Yeah, I have heard of that game. Yeah. My boyfriend has season tickets to the Pens, so I have
Right
been
on.
to a lot of Penguins games.
Are you converted?
Fully. All my DC friends are very disappointed because they're huge Caps fans, and they're like, Emma.
We hate the Caps.
They did. Whenever I said, oh yeah, I'm going to Pitt Law, they were like, oh, we're really proud of you for getting into law school, but if you become a Penguins fan, we're not going to be friends with you anymore. So I hope they're not watching this because they're going to be so mad at me.
The only team I think we dislike more on hockey team in this town would be the Flyers.
Which makes sense. They're Philly, and Philly's gross. So
Yeah.
Yuck.
That's like...
not a fan.
That's
Don't like the
definitely-
Phillies.
yeah.
Don't like the Flyers.
There's just
don't
some-
like the Eagles.
There's just something wrong with them people. I haven't
It's
figured
fine.
it out yet, but I'm sorry. But just something.
That's why you stay to this side of the state.
I think so. But you're like a full Yinzer now.
I am. It's. I like it. It's a very
She went to a
tight-knit community.
country concert at PNC Park. I mean, you're just about there now.
I
You're
know.
full Pittsburgh
And
now.
again, being from Atlanta, not a country music fan at all. But I went
Yeah,
there.
how's that work?
I have taste. I'm gonna make a lot of people mad now.
Hey, you want to get any argument out of me, but it's this town's and this is the crazy thing about this town. I've been saying this for a long time. It's a phenomenon. It's a phenomenon that for whatever reason, and it isn't just country. It's country recently this town's in love with, but I'll go back decades prior. Bands like Lynyrd Skynyrd would come to this town and sell out like no other place they'd go. Like Southern rock was like a thing in effing Pittsburgh of all
That's
places.
wild.
It's crazy. I know. I mean, it's just I just never understood it. But we have now. I also have another theory that when it comes to country music, like Kenny Chesney, and I think Kenny Chesney comes and does multiple nights here in our stadium, which he doesn't do that in other cities. I just think
Something about the Berg.
I think we just drink in this town something fierce.
That definitely
Beer
helps.
especially.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You need it for country music to get through it, right?
Exactly. that's what I did. Yep. I mean, well, and your beers aren't something to write off. Like Yingling's, that's a hefty beer, and I love Yingling. And
Yeah.
Iron City, it's got some kick to it. I'm a fan. I'm honestly, again, it has to be the right setting, but if it's cold and I enjoy it, I'll have it at a Penguins game too. Full
I
yin
mean, I'm
time.
surprised they have because Icy Light really kind of saved the company. I think
Yeah.
decades ago. So I thought Iron City was no longer really prevalent, but you can get an Iron City at the Penguin game.
Yeah, I don't like light beer. So I haven't had an icy light,
Doesn't
but
it a really distinct kind of taste, like
Oh, yeah.
metallic taste or something?
yeah, and my favorite beer in the whole world is Budweiser. I love Bud Heavy. Big fan.
Bud
Rock.
Heavy's
Every
the
time
real
I
Bud.
mention it, Rocco's like, "I'm gonna vomit. Please stop talking about it."
Yeah, he doesn't like
He can't even.
Budweiser.
He had a bad experience in college, and I was like, "All right, I get it." Like everyone has that one experience, they can't have that one alcohol again, and his is Budweiser, which is a damn shame because it's the king of beers for a reason.
Yeah, I'm okay at Budweiser. I can't drink Millers.
Ugh. I like a Miller
That's
High
my-
Life. I like a
that's-
Miller High Life, but Miller Light is disgusting.
Well, Miller High Life's the one I had the bad.
There you go.
I think I went into a coma and I was like 12 because I drank like 10.
That'll happen.
Yeah,
100%.
but you never forget that smell.
Oh yeah.
I'm telling you, when I was a kid, my uncle would drink these Iron Cities and I'd crack that open for him. Like I'd get one from the refrigerator and I'd crack it open and I would get that effervescence and I would smell it. It was so effing foul. And it just stuck with me. And Iron City has a unique effervescence to it that just...
I like it. It's that Yinzer twang, you know. You're like, okay.
Monongahela water.
Oh yeah.
I don't know what
they
it
didn't even
is.
get. They're like, no, Allegheny's too pure. We're gonna go for the Mon.
Pretty much. What don't you like about the town? You can say it. Whatever it is.
honestly, how gray it is. I mean, seriously, like the minute you hit like the fall, you get like 3 nice days of fall, and then it's just gray, and it doesn't look nice until May, and it's like, oh my God.
I would agree with you.
It takes a toll on you, especially during law school, because you're inside all day and you're studying and you're working, and then all you want is just go outside and see the sun, and you can't. There's no, like, Pitt Law had to invest in those like sunlight lamps.
Oh, come on.
I swear to God.
Are you serious?
You can get one from the library and like set it up next to your desk. Yeah. And
Really?
I don't know. One of my friends used it in law school, and I don't know how many people normally use it, but they were like, "Yeah, they've got the little sunlight lamps."
Yeah, I never thought when I was younger that it was like you would hear people joke about it, but I never thought it was a thing until I traveled. Mm-hmm. And you're like,
yeah,
wow.
Once you see what it's like not having that, you're like, oh my God.
The sun is up all day. Uh-huh. And then it happens here once in a blue moon. We start complaining about it.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just so hot.
I know,
can't
right?
escape that sun.
I can't believe when people start complaining about the heat in Pittsburgh. I'm like, you can it, because I need this. I need to get all of my vitamin D for the entire year right now, because it's not going to happen.
Day.
Exactly. Exactly.
Did you have a good time?
I had a great time. Did you have a good time?
I had a great time. I always have a great time. I really appreciate you coming and doing this. And there'll be other opportunities I will inquire to see if you're interested in some of our panel shows. And I know that the Cozza Law Cast, Rocco's got he's got some plans, but it's I love that concept too, because not only will it introduce different people within your organization, but we're going to start picking topics and all that. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, it's great.
I'd like to sit, and for me, I like to sit back and just like listen, because it's not what I do. Yeah. And usually it's pretty interesting. I mean, some of that law stuff is like, that's why you hire them to do it.
Exactly.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me.
We'll do this again.
Look forward to it.
All right. Friends, we're out.